we do have 2 applicants already so far. And the police chief's job has been advertised. Hate to see you go, Jason. And I believe we've had 2 interested parties in that so far. Now we'll go another June 7th. We conducted interviews today for a new city attorney. We had 2 great choices. I think by the time we got done, they were 2 good choices. They both ranked really high in our scoring, and I'll be making an offer by the end of the week on the one that I feel is going to fit good. The panel was pretty much in decision, so we'll move forward with that. So we're moving right along. The first order of business for the work session is the presentation of the police award, and I'll turn that over to Jason Wells.
All right, thank you so much. It's always a privilege to be able to present and award somebody that does a phenomenal job and really does a great service to the city of Red Lodge and to our police force. And I would like to recognize Di Barris, Di with Police Award. Di is a civilian employee. She's not sworn. She's a contracted employee. We have her hired for just part-time, as you're aware. Di does more part-time than most people do full-time. And so with that, I'll just read a little thing I have. It's accommodation and presentation of a civilian employee of the year. This award is presented to a non-sworn employee who best demonstrates outstanding work, performance, initiative, leadership, and effective interpersonal relations. As Chief of Police, it is my honor to present Di Barris with the Civilian Employee of the Year. Di exemplifies professionalism, trustworthiness in any task that she takes on. When assigned a task, no one ever has to worry if the task will get done, but instead can count on efficiency, timely, and professional work. Di has taken an essential role in making the Red Lodge Police Department a better department in many ways. Whether it be reports that she has been asked to prepare, policy that needs revised, citations that need entered, you can count on Di to have it done at the best of her ability. Her attitude is always positive and one that is willing to help. However, she can do that. There is no doubt that she truly cares about the officers and the Red Lodge Police Department. I want to take this time and thank you, Di, for your work ethic, your dedication, and willingness to take on any task assigned to you. The Red Lodge Police Department is a better place because of you. This is an award that has been designed. It is a civilian award that is given to a civilian employee, and Di, you are absolutely worthy of this award, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm touched. You can tell I'm touched. It's been an honor for me, actually, to work with the department and all of the officers, and if I could pull myself together for a minute, I'd like to take this opportunity to tell everybody that I happen to live in the county, but what happens in Red Lodge affects my home and where I live, and affects the town and people who come here to visit and who are moving here in this area. And I'm very confident with the work that the officers do in this department that my home and my property is safe, because what you do here affects all of us, okay? And I would like you all to take an opportunity to meet these people. They're family men, they have children in school, they're having babies. They're like you and me in the community. And the next time there's a Coffee with a Cop event, it's always advertised, please take time to come and say hello and meet these officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Di. Thank you, Di.
While the photo op is going, I want to say I was in there since Diane started working with the city of Red Lodge, and she has been an amazing asset to us all. Plus, she drives the VIP to the 4th of July parade for me every year.
That's right.
Thank you.
Oh. Oh.
Okay, we'll move on through our agenda. Agenda item number 2 has been scratched. We'll move on to agenda item number 3, resolution 3576. This is a resolution of surplus property. Jason, are your vehicles, you want to explain that a little bit?
Sure. So, surplus properties, we have 2 vehicles that we're gonna be getting rid of. One is the top, which has got a lot of miles on it. It's, let's see, it's officially 10 years old right now. And so it has been past its life as far as what's a reliable police unit to do. The other one is a 2015 Ford Taurus. Now, we've put a lot of money into that vehicle, to the point that it doesn't make sense to keep putting money into it. A water pump went out, and believe it or not, I never guessed that a water pump would cost $2,500 to fix, but that is what it costs to do. With us putting almost $7,000 into it the year before, and now looking at putting more money in, it doesn't make sense to keep this vehicle going. So we're going to put them up for surplus for sale. That's what this resolution is for, and we'll keep moving forward with our program that we've been doing. So any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
For
Yes.
the water pump, you guys didn't replace that?
We did not replace it at that point. That was, at my point, I said that's too much. We're not gonna put it, we'll sell it as is and let whoever buys it know that it needs a water pump, that it is leaking. It still runs, but it needs to be fixed.
And this is standard procedure, isn't it?
Yes, yep, absolutely. And like you said, this vehicle is being 10 years old. Most patrol vehicles, as I've done studies in the past, a patrol vehicle usually lasts 4 years. Now, the sheriff gets 5 years out of his, which I thought was pretty good. I want the council to know we get 6 years out of ours. 6 years is quite a bit for a vehicle that's run in city, and they're used hard because they're accelerating and stopping fast, just in typical police fashion. So that's vehicles, they say you can triple the mileage on a police vehicle to give you a more accurate idea of how many miles are really on a vehicle.
So when the vehicles are sold, where does the money go? Does it come back into?
It goes back into our budget under a line. I'm not exactly sure which budget that is, but for like computer equipment is what we used it for, I think, this last time.
Usually it goes back into like the capital for the police.
Has to be a capital fund.
Thanks.
Yep.
So, Chief,
Yes.
are you up to scratch where you should be with vehicles then?
Yes, so what I was able to do, we received some COVID money. And in the past, we've taken leased vehicles, and I want to explain the leased vehicle because we had some misinformation last time on leased vehicles. It's not a typical lease like you would do, go to a dealership and lease it, and then you turn the vehicle back. In a municipality, you cannot make payments like a 3-year payment or 5-year payment on a vehicle. And so they've got this lease program where we'll pay that vehicle off within 3 years and then buy it out at the end of that lease for $1. So it's a way of financing a vehicle over time. And so we've done that with our resort money. That's in the last budget items, we're paying off our vehicles this year, the 3 that I purchased before. We got rid of 2 because I'm getting rid of those 2 that they're not able to be used. With the COVID money that we received from the federal government that they reimbursed the city, rather than taking it out of resort tax, I asked that we take money out of that and purchase the vehicles out of that. Therefore, it should not affect the citizens of Red Lodge at all. It should leave that extra $100,000 in the resort tax for whatever the council or the mayor decide to do with that money. So we're trying to be smart, fiscally sound with the money, but still provide the essential services that we need in providing cars and equipment for our officers. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I had a question, but it's for the mayor. Just validating this has been through council and they've looked at it and signed off,
This one,
meaning legal counsel.
legal counsel? I think we just copied and
We
pasted
just
off
did it
of
from
the
the
one we did
previous
last
one.
time.
Mm, that was approved by
That was approved. Teresa?
One of the first things we did in the new year was to go over, I think it was a resolution for allocation of different funds that were left over from the COVID funds. And it was allocated at that time, a large portion went to computer, and we approved that, but does that?
So there was that resolution when we
Right.
received the CARES Act money, and those vehicles was within that.
It's within that, okay,
It-
without
it's-
not going back and doing
It's
anything.
a capital improvement, and
Yeah.
so computers just happen to be, I think, probably the first thing.
Well, that was the
It was
main
how it's
budget.
categorized.
Yeah.
But that's, so that large portion that looks like the police department got, that's what it's going for. So $100,000 of that will go to those vehicles, because it's not just purchasing the vehicles. We didn't purchase them for $50,000. but equipping them takes a lot of money and keeping up with the equipment in. We're very good here about having, video cameras. So a lot of people don't understand, our officers wear video cameras.
Mine's on the charger.
Yeah, but that's where we go. But, and then with the camera on them and then in the cars. And so when we activate our lights, the camera backs up 30 seconds prior to the lights coming on, which captures, usually an event. And so they're all recorded. Our officers don't get to touch them videos. As soon as they pull into the garage, they automatically download from the cars, and command is the only one that has access to it. So we have a very high technical, good system in place, and we're trying to just maintain that. And so, like I said, that stuff costs money. That's part of that $50,000 of allocation for the cars as to where that's going. So, like I said, that leaves $100,000 in the resort fund that I didn't get. And I did put in for a car, but I got cut. Not that I'm bitter. I'm good with it. I'm good with it.
Bringing it up.
Yeah, no, I'm good. And that's good. It's what works best for the city. So, we understand it's a give and take, and we're thankful that we got the 2 cars, and that puts us where we need to be.
Great. Thank you, Chief.
Any other questions on resolution 3576? Questions from the public on 3576? Questions from the public? Yes, Chris.
Around 85,000, so you would multiply that times 3, and that's usually what the miles are on them. And then they'll go to surplus auction, government site to be bid on. Yep.
I will mention, if you do have if the public has a question, please state your name and your residence address.
If I can correct that, he actually knows the mileage on them. The Tahoe was 98, you said,
Yeah.
and the Taurus was over 100,000. So
Hard miles, too.
it's very hard miles, yes.
Any other questions from the public? Questions from the public? Check that one off. Let's go to resolution 3577. This is a resolution to publish policies, procedures, and forms up for discussion. Okay.
Yeah, I should say, so this was a question. There had been some folks that had reached out to the mayor and asked him to have forms that are available online. It's something that's commonly done throughout the country and throughout our state. But I think in some conversations with the mayor, I think it would be beneficial if that is in fact the desire of council to have those posted and available on the website, then that we should provide the air cover by basically offering that as a resolution from council to get that. So that was my best understanding, and this was basically just to have a conversation and get it started and provide that sort of air cover. So with that in mind, I'll quit talking, see what else somebody else has to say on it.
And we did run this through council. He came back with the results. Did you send that out to council?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
And it was uploaded to the.
yeah, so those are his recommendations for this to go forward.
The other question I had is, do we actually have a form as of yet, or do we need to still generate a form, and do we need to build into this a time window? Do we have any sort of a standard form that folks can use, or how do we do it?
What are you talking about?
This is if somebody wants to file, just register a complaint or a concern.
Oh, so you're mainly talking about the police.
Well, this was the one that, so let me see if this version is so we had 2 because one of them was general city. One of them was just a set general city concern, and then the second one was specific to the police. So those were the kind of the 2 questions that I've heard from the public. And so, yes, my question was specific, do we have something, because that was my bigger concern, because that one feels like it probably ought to be a specific form, and it may take time to put together an appropriate fill in the blanks.
We do have a form. We've had that form for, probably 2.5 years. Shortly when I got in, we re-edited that form, and it has been available It is available to the public. City Hall has that form and is willing to pass it out to whoever would like one. In order for us to do the form, it is required to have a signature on it, and so it does need that signature for us to move forward in the process.
Okay,
So if that form was on there, we would have it in a PDF form where they couldn't sign it and email it in. What they would have to do.
they'd have to
they would
download
fill
it and sign it to
sign
do it.
and
And then bring it in.
And I think from the comments I've heard, that would be an appropriate avenue, and I think it requires signature. I understand the reasons why, and I have no issues with that.
It's a big town, it's a long way to City Hall. Sorry.
Let's see if it's right.
Yeah. Teresa.
I checked a couple of different cities, and it seems like a common practice to have any police form included with any of the other forms that the city has to offer. So to me, it makes sense to put that on the website, just as you would any other form that the public requests and prints out and brings into the city.
I see James is on. James, do you have a comment on this?
You're muted.
Open your mic, James.
All right.
There you go.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment, and the way I read this resolution saying all forms, for example, I have a lot of forms, conditional use, design review, planned unit development, annexation, floodplain permits. All of those require pre-application meetings before a form is even started. So from my view, I'm a little concerned that if it was online, people are going to fill them out and submit them and think they're good to go when they haven't had their meeting yet. And I know we could put something on the website to say a pre-application is still required, but I think a lot of people would probably miss that. And I think there'd be people who fill out forms who don't need to, or they're going to fill out forms and there's going to be too much information that is incorrect or needs to be changed. And so on a personal standpoint, I think some of my forms would be better not to be on the website.
Teresa.
So wondering if it would make sense to make them available but not downloadable. I think it sometimes, I know maybe this is just my own habit, but if I'm going into a meeting, I like to know what kinds of information I'd be asked for, even if the form follows the meeting. It's nice for the person that's coming in to be prepared to see what they're going to be up against. Does that make any sense, or would that complicate things? It still has the forms on there if they want to look at them. It doesn't harm anything, does it?
Yeah, maybe if they were not writable. But typically, before I have a pre-application meeting, I've had 2 or 3 phone calls with somebody and made them aware of the regulations that will pertain to their project. So they're typically not showing up to a pre-application meeting not knowing what types of things are going to be discussed.
Okay.
Can't that all be put on the website to tell them what they have to do?
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't hurt though, would it, James?
I mean, we could, but I still think that people will probably not read directions that state a pre-application meeting is required. We can try and highlight that and turn it bold, but I think there'll still be a lot of people that don't read all of the instructions and submit things maybe they don't have to submit or submit them incorrectly. That's my personal opinion.
James, the mayor had deferred to me earlier. Is the pre-application, is there actually a form for the pre-application, or is there a request for that pre-application meeting or something? And would that be the one that's appropriate to post online and then say additional forms are available following this meeting? Does that address the concerns and the needs?
No, because a pre-application meeting can, I mentioned 5 different things that require a pre-application meeting, and somebody could need a pre-application that needs anywhere from 1 to all 5 potentially. And the only one where we have a set template for a pre-application meeting is subdivision. The other ones, it's basically after the meeting, I write up a summary of the meeting and then list the processes that the applicant would go through and everything that the city would need for them to move the application forward. And because there's so many different ways an application can go in terms of does it need conditional use or planned unit development or not, there isn't really a one-size-fits-all type of pre-application meeting form.
Go ahead, Lori.
So what would you advise we do, James, to resolve this issue?
Well, my personal, what I would just like to see is just something on the website that states if you need, basically these are the types of development processes that would require the following permits, and to contact the community development director if you seek to do any of these things.
Would it be like I'm sorry, would it be like a matrix, you mean? Like a checklist type matrix that says that you could need these things, but you wouldn't know until after a pre-application meeting?
Yeah, it could.
Pete?
Having been on both sides of this, representing developers for years and also sitting on the county and city planning board, I can see where James is coming from. I think it would do a better service to the public if they didn't have to double their applications. I think 1 or 2 paragraphs on our website explaining what we have just talked about here and giving them a knowledge of what to expect, but preface it by the pre-application meeting, which is essential for the planning director to get an essence of what they're trying to do and then direct them to the right forms. So I'm going to kind of favor with James to not overdo the initial contact, but make them aware of the process.
And I think that's our goal, is just to acknowledge that we live in a modern era. We know that you're overbooked and have a mile-long list of folks to get back with. I think the goals are, with the modern technology, as Pete said, to be able to set and manage expectations, and where we can provide the information up front, we do provide the information, but that does not presume that everything can be provided up front. And so some of those we need to look at, like that's planning. We've still got just kind of a front office, you know, when people have concerns, you know, with water. I've called Jim a couple times where people thought there was water leaking or there was this or that and the other. And the request, as I understand it from the constituents, is that's great, Dave. You know who to call, and you know to pick up Jim and say, hey, Jim, we got somebody who thinks maybe they're flooding. Is this city? Is this not city? But average Joe citizen doesn't necessarily have all of those contacts, and that's what we're trying to do is give that their answer is, I go to the website, and I just heard that we have this wonderful, fantastic website where all my questions can be answered, and we at least need to get them started in the right direction. That's our goal here, is just to put that on. And there was a couple very specific ones. The police specifically came up, City Works came up, General City Hall was specifically mentioned. So like I said, I don't know what the answer is yet. It was, like I said, I think our goal was see if we were all on the same page, that we wanted to make what was reasonable to be available, and then provide that direction to the mayor if that was our wish.
Lonnie, do your group get phone calls asking about these things and asking what to do, who to talk to?
But I mean, you can't put everything on
No,
the
of course
website.
not. No,
So,
but
I mean,
they do get questions, right? Yeah.
But there is a general form on the website people can fill out, and it is emailed to me or utility clerk regarding water, sewer, for that stuff, in general questions.
Sure.
So, and then I just redirect it to whatever department it is, but there are those forms.
Okay, thank you.
Teresa?
I should know this, but I mean, I understand you probably have so many more forms than we've ever seen. But is there a dog form for registering your dog with the city?
There is,
on
but
the
it's not
site.
online because we have to keep records,
Right,
and we're working on.
right, because that would be handy.
Right, but we have to be able to have like a copy, like for the officers to know and for our records. So
Right.
we are working with trying to figure out all those details, so, but it's not gonna happen overnight.
Well, even, I mean, I'm not an interactive form as much as just a form, a PDF somebody could print out. So you could say, oh, look, this is what that entails. I better make sure I have my dog's rabies shot before I bring in the registration. It's helpful to, it kind of leads, you know, that information that somebody would need to know before coming in with a form and then picking it up and then saying, oh, gosh, I have to come back because I don't have that record.
And keeping in mind, a lot of people don't even have a computer now.
They could still look at it online. Well,
No.
at the library. The library? Well, for those that don't, they'll have to come in.
Yes.
We can't solve world hunger, but we could make
Absolutely.
it better for
Absolutely.
people that do have a computer.
I saw Pete's hand earlier too.
To get back to the planning department, I would personally recommend that the website give a description of the process, emphasizing the pre-development meeting, at which time then James can get an idea of what they want and direct them to the right forms, so they don't duplicate pages and pages and pages of submittals.
So what I'm seeing so far is, in addition to the couple of edits that Mr. Painter had recommended, modifying the word all, where it says all policies, procedures, and forms shall be made available, to look for some better wording that basically said where practical or where appropriate, and modify that wording. Is there any other changes that we need to make to? I think what I'm hearing is that everybody likes the idea that we ought to make what's available or what can be made available. We just need to come up with wording that folks are happy with.
I had a question about one of Mr. Painter's suggestions about changing the time limit on, making each item available online within 60 days of the final passage of this resolution. And it says, and he said, within a reasonable amount of time. So I guess my question just is, what's considered reasonable?
That's a great question, and being that we don't have an IT person, so our person that does the website does it in spare time when there is some.
Yeah.
So it's hard to put a timeline on that.
Yeah. Then you could have somebody saying, well, I don't think that's reasonable. And somebody thinks it's reasonable.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah,
It's
what you
reasonable.
say. But if we put 30 days on it, we might not be able to make that 30 days.
Right.
Especially if we're talking about a lot of forms here all of a sudden. So,
I'm comfortable that what we're doing as a council is providing guidance and direction on what we like to see, and I'm comfortable with as soon as practical or reasonable. I think if somebody says, hey, we're gonna get to it, but there's a difference between we haven't seen it in 6 months and it's like we need to prioritize this. It's not a direct reporting structure. It's just the council's role to articulate what we'd like to see based on what we hear from our constituents. And so I'm okay with the reasonable and realizing that there is some fudge and flexibility there, because I think we all recognize when that's being stretched and abused, and I don't anticipate it being a problem, I guess. We can have that discussion if needs be, when it comes up. Help me understand why this is reasonable.
Yeah.
Were there any other suggestions or changes to the wording or concerns that folks had? Mayor, if you have no further questions, I think I'm good with the information we've collected on that.
okay, so what we need to do is send this back to Sam and get that all policies out of there and change that word.
So modify and resubmit, and then presuming that we can get that done in the time frame, then have it for action at the next council meeting.
I'm good. Are you, Tom? Teresa?
Yep.
Okay. Move it forward? Okay.
Yep.
And do that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Alternatives any comments from the public on this?
Excuse me, I have a comment.
Yes.
My name is Kristen Cogswell, I live at 629 Wood Street West here in Red Lodge. And, you know, for me as an individual, it would be very helpful if, I'm emphasizing the policies and procedures because, you know, I serve on the police commission and there aren't any, okay? So if there are some, then I can't find them and I'm on the commission. So, you know, I just think it would tighten up things up so that everybody's on the same page as far as what are the procedures with things. And so if that hasn't been tightened up, then this is a great opportunity for it to be tightened up and for everybody to have that availability.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
I just had a question for Chris.
Oh, go ahead.
So when you say policies and procedures, is charters involved in that that group, like a charter for the police commission or a charter for?
Not to the best of my knowledge. The only thing that I've been able to find is something it's about 10 years old and it comes from the state, but I know that other policies, for instance, there was a situation where we were interviewing candidates and there were only 2 people there and nobody knew if we should continue to have the meeting or not. And so Steve Roy just said, no. And, you know, certainly we should have a procedure that outlines that. And then there was another question about, were we able to have a private conversation about it? And it was, you know, nobody knew. And again, Steve was forced to make a decision, but it would just be nice for that responsibility to not be an individual at the drop of a hat, but to have that in a written format that we can all learn.
Chief.
I can address that. It is addressed in Montana state law what their boundaries are. It's very specific, and if you wanted to put that in there, I mean, they were been given to the police commission several times as to what the state says their responsibilities are. The other thing with the closed meeting, it's an open meeting, and all public meetings have to be open to the public. The only time you can close a meeting is if it's a disciplinary action and that person wants it closed. They have the ability to have a closed meeting at that time. But to my understanding, not being an attorney, but being in law enforcement as long as I have, those are the only reasons that a closed meeting. And so I think those are addressed through state law.
And, you know, the state law does define, as the chief mentioned, what our duties are, but there's nothing, and I believe personnel issues, you can also have closed meetings, but again, that would just be nice if it was spelled out, because even right here in this meeting, we don't really know.
I guess where I'm at is, I don't know that we're gonna make you all happy. You know, we're gonna try to put as much as we can on there. I would almost say, you know, we almost need to get together with your department heads and say, what forms do you have and what do we need to put on there? Because there's, like you say, there's a ton of forms. Do we need them all there? Are we gonna get them all there? Are we gonna get them there on a timely method? I can't tell you. Are we gonna leave some out that's not gonna make everybody happy? I guess we need to know what you want. If you wanna get together with James and say, you know, what forms can we have up there? What do you feel comfortable with? I mean, I think I'm gonna have to throw some of that back onto you guys too.
I think it's a fair request. Good suggestion.
Teresa.
Well, I think we've got a pretty good idea of what people have been asking about, and just to start with, like the low-hanging fruit, and then after that, maybe the departments could offer what they believe would be most useful. But, I mean, I back to Kristen's question, I was thinking, you know, maybe that's more a matter of the bylaws for the police commission.
Which should be online.
No doubt. I mean, every other department or board has their, I think they have their bylaws out there.
Or a charter.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like this is something that we need to have Sam look at and give us some direction on, because basically what we're talking about here is the police commission. And as the chief mentioned, state law has certain implications, and I imagine the union contract also has something to say on all this. So we need to have this clarified. We're just basically talking around each other here.
We are.
None of us know.
No, we don't know.
And I think I'm making some notes based on I think the goal is to still move forward and have something for the mayor to present to Sam Painter. But I think part of our thing is the appropriate follow-up that we need to work with each of the department heads. And then I think we'll build into this that when there is a question as to whether something is appropriate to be on the website or not, then we'll just bring that to the council and have the council say yay or nay. If there's a discrepancy, I tend to trust boards or numbers of people more than individuals, not because I have any lack of confidence in individuals. In fact, a lot of the times I have the absolute utmost confidence in the individuals, but I like processes that have groups and boards, because in my mind, historically and experience personally, boards not only have less of a tendency to be rogue, but I think more importantly, they provide a level of satisfaction for the public when they know that there's not just one set of eyes. I think there's a public resistance anytime that there's one set of eyes, and if we can provide that air cover, I think it's beneficial for us to do. And so I think we can build that into it. And I guess that's our goal, is we want people to feel that they've been able to voice a concern, and if they brought it and they said, hey, sorry, we don't think that ought to be online, it's HR, it's personnel, it's blah, 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 blah. I think they're more able to accept that, even if it's begrudgingly, if it's a group as opposed to a single individual. And I don't want to put any department head under that microscope. I want to provide them that air cover.
Teresa?
All right, nobody else is gonna say it, so I'll say it. So there have been numerous requests for the police complaint form to be online, as an example of one form that should be on the website. And that's not going into a lot of detail and bylaws and all the other stuff that complicates how much, what's the priority. That's a simple thing to put on there. That's a low-hanging piece of fruit. And the dog registration form, isn't that so simple? These forms already exist. If we could get them in PDF and make them ADA compatible or compliant or whatever it is, just to put it out and let people look at it or print it out themselves, or understand that, oh, they do have that form, I have to call in to Lonnie or somebody else to get it. That's a simple thing, without going into all the charters and bylaws. And I mean, I think we're complicating it here.
Oh, yeah, we've got two separate things going on here. The forms, yeah, put them on the website. That isn't, all that means is that they're there for people to download. But what Kristen was talking about, I think, maybe I'm wrong, is we need to, in particularly with the police commission, but there may be also others, we need to have, we're shooting in the dark here, because my understanding is that state law, union contracts, and so on, we don't know how those affect us. I do know, because I did a little bit of research, that Montana has some bizarre stuff that Idaho, Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota don't have. And when it comes to how municipalities handle their local government. So I don't think what Teresa's saying, if I'm misinterpreting, tell me, is quite, I mean, it's related, but it's not the same thing that we're talking about here, about the police commission itself.
You know,
That's different, yeah.
Right.
my comments are for the police commission, because that's what I know best as a member of the police commission and as a person who was trying to learn about the police commission. But it is in no way specific to the police commission. And, you know, just policies and procedures are very general, and they're universally applicable, and they're not secret. But what are they? Where are the police policies and procedures?
We have police policies and procedures through Lexipol, which is a national site for policies.
But I mean, I just think that all the departments would just it would just be easier. What's the policy for getting a, variance on a, it just very general things. So I don't think it is, I don't think it's, two different things. I think it's just one thing, and it can be a very simple thing. But right now, we've got this great new website, and that's what the website is for, is to inform people. And we should do everything we can to do that with the policies and procedures. The forms are a subset of that.
Mhm.
And if there's any questions about something, then we can ask Sam, and we can send him a draft. These are the things we intend to provide. But policies and procedures are very general. I'm not talking about minutia, department-specific things. I'm just talking about policies and procedures for the general public.
Lots of notes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back at that, we're gonna carry it forward.
Yep, I will, and anybody who would like to reach out to me with suggestions, I will reach out specifically. Teresa, you've made a couple comments, so I'll reach out to you specifically. I think I've captured everybody's notes, but recognizing that we will need to get this done probably within this week to give the mayor enough time to get the updated language to Sam Payne and expect it back in a reasonable time frame. And if we don't, then it just means that it'll be carried forward and it'll be some future meeting. I think establishing that, yep, we're all pointing in the same direction is, it's not a race that has to be done by tomorrow.
And
I'm not lucky.
Well, and I guess I would just say, you know, like, as Teresa just pointed out, the dog license form and the complaint form, I mean, those already exist. Why do we need a resolution to post on the website? That's, I don't know why, that seems pretty.
And I don't know that we do. In fact, I would say that it's probably the mayor's call to take some of those forms that are already available and go ahead and direct. He certainly has that capability to do that, even without a resolution. I think hearing from the council, knowing that that's where we want, provides him some air cover for that to do that. So, and that was a lot of the goal, was just to have a discussion to see if the assumption was that most of us were on the same page, but we've never discussed it as a group. And so I'm grateful to have done that.
Teresa?
Yeah, I think, I know this is all rolled into one, resolution, but I agree that policies and procedures, it could require some taking out old documents, dusting them off and reworking them, and that would be some of where we know that would need a longer period of time to make it reasonable to post it. And especially with the police commission, I know even with the old ordinance, that goes way back. So that probably hasn't been looked at in a long time. So some things will take longer to resolve and get out there.
Okay, we're moving that forward. Alternative contract. Yes.
I was in contact with the city judge today, and he was enthusiastic that we go forward with this renewed contract. I think the only basic change was a longer term of notice and renegotiation. So the city judge is a proponent of this going forward, and I am too.
Okay.
And I am too.
Discussion. Dave?
So Pete, on the last thing, that was on 12A that you were talking about, where it said renewal negotiations are to begin 6 months prior to contract expiration. That's an addition.
That's the new, yes.
That's the new provision. The question I had, there were several spots. I'll reference 4A as just the first one. So it says, board representation, the city shall provide the contractor with the names of 3 persons residing within the city limits. So there are several places where it refers to the city in here. Is that council? Is that mayor? Is that department heads? Who is the city?
I have no clue.
Who's provided the names historically? Has it been mayor with consent of council, or who is it?
Pretty much so, yeah.
Do you think that would be the appropriate way to do that, and maybe just articulate that out?
What are you trying to clarify?
So what we do is we have a contract, which is a legal document. It says, the city shall provide the contractor with the name of 3 persons residing within the city limits. So city provide me 3 names, right? That's not the way it works. And so, a lot of times appointments in general are done by the mayor with advice and consent of council. And I just, because this didn't clarify city and it showed up several times, I just thought it would be better clarified. And I recognize this one is probably an updated search and replace, but I would also feel more comfortable with it knowing that it's gone through Sam Painter as well before it comes to, I suspect that would have been one of those types of things he might have called out, but if not, I am.
Well, I don't support your call out. I think it's fine the way it is.
As city?
Yes.
What are you suggesting that it be changed to, the mayor?
Well, the reason I asked what has been historically done is, and I think most appointments, I guess, and maybe this is just because of having sat here for a few years, most appointments, we do designate, whether it be planning board, whether it be the police commission, most appointments, we do designate who that's going to be. We do say it's either one will be by the mayor and one will be by council, or it will be appointed by the mayor with consent of council. So in most of our other light contracts, we do spell it out rather than just leave it vague. And that's just my thought, is to eliminate ambiguity and keep it consistent. And I'm not picky about which one it is. I just think we ought to be clear. Right now, we have historical, we have institutional knowledge by the fact we've had people who've gone through this. Lonnie's been through it before, the mayor's been through it before, but we constantly have turnover with new folks who will say, oh, what does this mean?
Who currently sits on the board as the representative of the city?
We never have gone to any meetings with them at all, really.
Oh.
I'm not sure, does the judge go? I don't,
Yes.
okay, so the judge,
And I have been invited to.
okay.
So what I'm hearing is that the city currently isn't having board representation?
Just, the judge, as far as we know, and, so what paragraph are you on?
That's 4A.
Okay. Yes,
So, Mayor, I'm wondering if it makes sense, the advisory committee lists out very specifically for the, who's gonna be on there. But it wouldn't be such a stretch to do that for the board representation. We just determined it could be the judge, a council member, and possibly the mayor, or you could very simply just list 3 people that would fit the criteria and be done with it.
Because the judge is already included via number 3, a representative of the city court.
right.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think, Pete? On the board represent.
The specificity of individuals, I am in agreement with, but to send this to Sam Painter and delay it, I don't think it's in the best interest, but I will go along with the consensus.
I'm not suggesting we delay it. I'm just saying tonight's discussion, just have him look at it before we bring it for action at the first of the month. That's all I'm saying. It's just, I'll feel better having an attorney say, hey, there's nothing stupid that you overlooked. So I'm with you. I don't want to delay it.
It could be as simple as just saying that the city will submit a second list of 3 persons appointed by the mayor. Poof, done. And then the mayor can decide it should be whoever else happens to be liaisoning with stuff, and maybe it's clued in. But I don't think it would be that difficult to come up with someone that, maybe it should be something at the mayor's discretion at the time.
And do we want to, I guess that's the question, is do we want to just say the mayor shall appoint, or mayor with consent of council? That would be my vote, just from traditional standards. But if the mayor is remembering things differently than me, but that's my recollection of how most things work.
So I would think if we keep it the same as everything else, then it's not confusing. So it should be mayor's discretion to appoint and the council to approve. Why change it and figure out something new when we've already got a process in here?
I agree.
Well, I guess we need to take this back to alternatives and have them make the corrections.
And then will we have our attorney read through it to represent us on this side
I
of the
really
contract?
don't need, if that's your only question, we rewrite it that way. I don't think there's really a need to send it to Sam. Essentially, it's the same contract except for the change of renewing the contract or changing the contract that's been changed.
And the judge is fine with it.
Correct. Yes.
And I'm with Pete's comments, so I'm okay with moving forward with that.
So what is our game plan here?
So send us back to alternatives with the change on number 4, talking about the city, providing 3 board members.
Mayor appoints and council.
Right. Which we never really ever caught before anyway, so we never have had a board. That's not that at all.
And is there anyone on the council who prefers that this also goes to Sam Painter after it's changed?
No.
That's the only question we have, so that should be something that can be done internally without having to go to Sam.
Yep. Any questions from the public? Questions from the public? We'll work on it.
So that's gonna be your action item, Mayor, or Pete,
Was that?
on the 4A? And just,
Yeah,
okay.
that's Pete's department head, pretty much.
Certainly.
Yeah. Okay. Ordinance 954, modified police commission ordinance. I think y'all got the copy that's been reviewed by Sam. Discussion.
I feel like I've used up my syllables for the evening, but being the one who submitted, I'll go ahead and pick it up. I do, the goal here was to start the conversation. When last this was presented to us, it was actually a strike of the existing ordinance. And in reviewing Sam Painter's comments, I did not read them to recommend striking the existing. I thought he had several good comments. I do agree with his concluding sentence that I do not recommend adopting the ordinance at this time, but I think that's because there's some points that we need to clarify and clean up there. Again, a lot of this is to provide air cover. Having talked to some of the other cities within the state and how they use this, they are very big proponents in that it provides air cover for their police department. And again, this is not, I think actually now's probably a fantastic time because this is not an indictment in any way, shape, or form of any individual or any members or any department. It's just the way that our world is going. In fact, today being the day that it is, I noticed on the news this morning they were talking, they had cited over 3,000 such ordinances that have been passed in the last year that basically do things very similar to what we've already had on the books for 100 years. This actually backs off the existing ordinance. If you go down and read it, in the section is in I think it's 526, where it defined the police commission as basically conducting all the procedures. And one of our concerns is that's a lot of those duties are most appropriately and according to state law for the police chief. And so we needed to modify that so that this still keeps the commission as a review board, but at the same time, it backs off their position from being the ones to implement discipline to just being a secondary soundboard. And again, when I say air cover, I think of a particular incident in our own community within the last year or two that came up, and part of our response was, you as Joe Public are not going to know the result of this because this is an HR issue or this is an internal discussion. But I think it would have been very, very helpful in that situation, and it's been echoed by the cities that I've talked to say, however, you need to know that there is an appointed board that is sworn to the same privacy and appropriate HR type duties that has looked at that and signed off on it. And I think I can think of a couple of situations, I guess more specifically one situation in the last year where that would have been very helpful to be able to say, this is how the chief handles it, and you don't know what it is, but there is a board appointed to do so, and they've looked at it and signed off and given it a thumbs up. And I think that is very helpful at putting things to rest, and again, keeping things from turning into mob mentality. So I thought the comments were good. I think we do need to modify it, but I'm curious what other people's thoughts were too.
Chief.
I'm very, very much into what the public gets to know, but I also, as a chief, am required to protect employee rights. And I think that we need to follow state and federal law. That's what I'm asking you to do. The other thing is that I'm going to put this as a little bit different. And it takes 6 months to train an officer. There's a lot of protocols, a lot of training, a lot of things that we have to know how to deal with every situation that we have to make a split-second notice, but we get to be judged on for years and years down the line. So my question is, if you had a doctor that performed a surgery, would you ask a panel of civilians to make sure that he did that operation correctly? The answer would be no, because they haven't been trained in the procedures to understand if it was administered properly. But yet when we come to the police force, we're going to hire or appoint 3 people who've never been trained in police tactics, who've never been in the field to understand the stresses and decisions that have to be made, but yet you want them to make a decision on the officers to see if it was just punishment or not. It's no different than asking 3 civilians to judge a doctor whether he performed a surgery correctly or not. And the reason that I believe that the state law is there for the chief to appoint an investigation and for that chief then to administer discipline is because that chief has got the experience and understands the tools that are used, the procedures that are used, and that need to be done. And I don't think that we're doing any justice to any police department anywhere in the nation if we allow 3 citizens who have no knowledge and have watched cops maybe 3 or 4 seasons to think that they understand what we do in the field and to then discipline or approve or disapprove of discipline of our officers. I believe that the procedure that is set in place where the police department has those people is where it's at. I'm fine with being open, but again, regardless, you have to protect the employee's rights. If you want to know what a police officer does, there's a method to do that. And that's going through district court, not justice court, not a city court, district court, and have a judge say that your right to know supersedes an employee's right to privacy. And so as the chief, like I said, I may not have a dog in this fight much longer, but I do feel very passionate about it. And I think that you are playing with fire if we start getting into what you are proposing. And I very adamantly recommend that you stay away from that. Because I think that it's just a matter of time. You yourself said, Dave, other states have different laws that do different things. That's very true. Montana's laws are very articulate and are very specific as to what is to be done. And that's all I'm asking is follow the law, what was set forth by legislatures and that has been passed by the people. Because even though the state gives municipalities the ability to pass ordinances, it does not give you the right to supersede state and federal law.
Dave?
So I wanted to acknowledge a couple things, and so first off, I don't believe this is a conversation, and I agree completely with the chief when it comes to a right to know versus personal HR issues. I absolutely agree. I don't see that that's where this is going. I find it interesting and at the same time kind of promising when you talk about you wouldn't go to 3 people who don't have doctor's degrees and have them do a review, a post-action review of something, when in fact we actually do. We have a hospital board here, as hospitals do across the entire country, and there's all sorts of people on those boards who do not have medical degrees. And so they do not have a role to make real-time decisions and snap decisions that a doctor needs to make, to keep that analogy of a medical system and a law enforcement system, to keep that going, that they don't play a role in that. However, they do play a role in reviewing, and they do have, that's a very, very common practice for all sorts of businesses, hospitals just being one of them. And part of that concept is to get outside eyes. What does somebody who hasn't been to 8 years or 12 years or 16 years of medical school think and agree about this? And like I said, I pointed out before, I have a son who's in law enforcement, so this is not a, I'm not sympathetic to it. In fact, like I said, to me, I'm looking to provide, and I'll give the specific city because I talked to the city attorney in Missoula specifically at length on this. He said you could not get them to get rid of this. This provides them tremendous air cover. And he gave me 2 or 3 very specific examples where he thought if it kept the city out of district court or out of the escalating things to the state, he thought that it was, people just wanted to be heard. It gave them that opportunity. And like I said, what they have in place, which is very similar to this, they loved.
Keith? Go ahead.
To consider this ordinance flies in the face of common sense. To turn over confidential human resource records to a group of non-sworn civilians who have not undergone a background check, who have not been vetted, and who have no confidentiality agreement in place is an insult to common sense, an insult to the many residents of Red Lodge, and an insult to the integrity of our very professional police department. We have recently requested an opinion of this proposed ordinance by a law firm in Billings, as well as from the director of the MSU Local Government Center. Based on the review, their conclusions are as follows. From the Billings law firm partner who sent the opinion, I quote, "I do not recommend adopting this ordinance at this time," unquote. From the MSU Local Government Center director, I quote, "As with any public body, they have a duty to protect the rights of individual privacy. If any board, commission, or council fails to protect an individual's privacy rights, they could be held personally liable. If we are to take these 2 highly reputable recommendations and opinions, it becomes very clear this resolution is a very serious mistake for the city of Red Lodge."
Thanks, Pete. Any more comments? Teresa?
I don't see that it's just the way it's been revised, it's just to review all complaints and subsequent findings or conclusions. I don't think that the intent here is to act as much as it is to be aware and to help the community with a minor amount of oversight. If for instance, the mayor may be busy with something else and there's some other, you're managing things within your own department, which is completely appropriate, but you might be busy too. And there could be things where maybe there are a number of rumblings among the residents and they have nowhere to take it. They could take it as a complaint, but then it goes nowhere, right?
No,
and how does the commission even know that there has been, maybe it's a matter of a level of complaint, right?
So I can answer some of the questions. When a complaint comes to me, and it is shared with HR so that there's an investigation that does take place. One of the things that I want to caution you about, and it scares the living bejesus out of me, because if you're getting complaints, but we're not reporting what those complaints are, I could complain that my shoes are not shined enough. I could get a complaint every day from a member of this community that says Chief Wells does not shine his shoes good enough, and I find that offensive. So I then have to present that complaint as a complaint, not knowing who it's on or what it's about. And as one civilian could stack it to where we have 365 complaints on an officer that have never been taken care of. And nobody gets to know what those complaints are. They don't know if it was an abuse of force. They don't know what it is. All they get to know is it's a complaint. But that number is there, and it sure looks ominous that we have a police force in need of some very serious corrective action. And that's one of the concerns that I have, because I can't tell you what that complaint is, and I can't tell you what the disposition or the result of that complaint is on the officer, because we have to hold that employee's right to privacy very clear. So if I'm just giving you numbers, at 365 complaints, what was it on, Chief? I can't tell you. Was it founded or unfounded? Well, it was, some were founded, some were unfounded. Sometimes my shoes weren't shined as good as they should be. You understand, it can really lead to a misinformation, because if you're only doing numbers, you can have 2 or 3 people who absolutely despise the police department write a complaint every day, and then I have to report that to you without you knowing what that is.
And wouldn't there be a way to reasonably set what is a severe complaint that should be brought forward, or we should have awareness of?
I cannot legally,
You can't.
I cannot share with anybody on an employee's complaint. That is, the right to privacy is held up in federal and district court, very, very serious. And if I violate that, I then become liable. Okay, I'm not going to violate that. And so that's what I'm saying. I understand that the community wants to know, but I will tell you this: I received a complaint on an employee that was photocopied maybe 10, 15 times. I didn't count exactly the number, but in that range, and just individual signatures at the bottom. So if I bring that to you, I have to say there were 15 complaints on this officer. Are there really 15 complaints? There's 15 signatures, but they didn't even care enough to write their own complaint. They took a photocopy of the original complaint, and each one just signed it. Do you see where it becomes very gray? And if I have to report those numbers to you, it really skews the meaning of what that complaint was. Because I cannot legally, nor will I, share a disciplinary record unless I'm ordered. If a court orders me, I will open it up, because then it's not me, it's the court. I will more than absolutely comply with the district court order, no problem. Because there's a judge that says your right to know supersedes his right to privacy. But until that happens, I cannot disclose anything to you other than a number of complaints.
Thank you.
Two questions. Were you using, what, 365 as it's just a number? Or?
Just a number.
Okay.
If they complained every day on my shoes, 365 days.
Okay, all right. The other question is, can you make, just here, not to be, are these complaints, like the one you just mentioned, frivolous, or can you break it down into, yeah, I was stopped down on the street and I didn't like it, so I'm going to complain, or was it something really serious?
So what you're asking me to do is exactly what's being done now. Is it frivolous or is it a good complaint? Well, you are trusting me to give you that information, just as you're trusting me now to handle the situations in which you've done.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had employee issues where I have had to discipline employees. Nobody knows that other than me saying I've had to discipline employees, because it is their right to privacy. And when I discipline them, it's in a private setting. It's not in front of the entire department, we bring them in, we deal with it, and we get corrective action, and that's where it's at. The complaints since I've been here have been 3 years, have been minuscule, almost non-existent. As in, like, I believe 3, and 2 of them were the same complaint, just 6 months apart. So, like I said, again, you're asking me to, but the community doesn't have faith in their chief of police. And I think that's one of the things I find most frustrating as being the chief here at Red Lodge. Great community, love the people, wonderful atmosphere, people that really care and get involved in their community. But you hired me with 23 years of experience to come in and lead this police force, which I think I've done a good job. But yet, you want to sit here and question my integrity, my knowledge, and it means nothing. And so when I speak, it's as if nothing has happened. So I ask myself all the time, why do I even come to these meetings and talk? You don't listen. And so what I'm telling you is I give you accurate, I have no reason, none, to hide anything. I'm open and transparent as much as I can be legally. I can't disclose complaints on employees. But you have to have a leader in a department. Jim is the leader of the Public Works. Lonnie is in charge of the officers and the staff here. I'm in charge of the police department. There has to be faith in who your department heads are. I have never given you any reason to doubt any decision that I've made that I'm aware of. You may not, some people may not agree with it, but I can articulate why I did it and stand up for what I did. So I understand people want to know complaints, but legally, I can't give them to you. And you're asking the same method, trust in me, to tell you if it's a serious complaint or not a serious complaint. But regardless, if it's a serious complaint, it gets handled. HR knows. HR's been involved. It's not just me. I consult HR. We've gone to some very in-depth training to make sure that we do it right.
So my question really was, we understand, I mean, as elected representatives of the town, the 6 of us are responsible to our constituents.
Right.
So if we get complaints from them about the police or about the streets or about anything else, we need to respond. We try to, I'm sure we all do, try to respond to that. I guess what your illustration about 20 people or 19 people signing the same form, photocopied form, is really kind of an eye-opener, because I get a lot of letters, and a lot of them are from the same people, again and again and again and again. And so what I was trying to get at is there a number? I mean, I don't believe that the entire town is all upset about the police department. I think there are a few people who are, whether they're legitimate or not, that's, I can't tell you. But.
And I would agree with Tom. I would say the majority of the community supports law enforcement. Yeah. Absolutely. I don't disagree with that at all. And I would never want to say that that's not true. I really feel that the community does support their law enforcement here. As in always, there's always people who don't. There's always people who see things differently than other people. But I guess there's not a real good answer, I guess, to answer that. I'm open to discussion. If we can find a way to do it, that's fine. I just, from where I'm seeing and where I'm seeing what wants the proposal, the ordinance that's here, I read Sam's comments too. It's very similar to the answer you got from our previous city attorney and myself. And I still see, I mean, in my opinion, it's clear, but maybe it's not as clear for everybody. I know you have.
Yeah, so as being the newest member to this game, I kind of feel like I'm coming in and things that were discussed before, I'm kind of unaware. So
City Commission.
So in reference to this ordinance, where I'm looking at the one that's, been all marked up and everything, but the original part, so just in section 526 duties, charges, B charges, what was crossed out to what originally, is in place right now is to hear, try, and decide all charges brought by any person or persons against any member or officer of the police department. So is that currently being done? Because I'm confused about when you say you, are you referring to us as a council or the general public? I don't think the general public, I agree, they don't need to know all the details, that's not appropriate. But I feel like the commission is your people, that the three people that you should be able to share this with.
And I would like to explain that with you. That's not true, and I'll tell you why. The original ordinance was written that they would, 1928, I think?
Yeah, it's 101
years old, okay? Back then, that was probably a pretty good law.
Right.
We've increased the laws in knowledge and ability. The police commission is set very clearly in statute. If you read what a police commission does, it is to verify that all the information there is correct, that they meet the standards to become a police officer. The other thing is that they are there as a board. If I discipline one of my officers, they are the appeal board to that officer. So in other words, if I made a complaint on you, and Lonnie is on the police commission, and she gets the original complaint, and I issue discipline, now you gotta go to Lonnie and say, hey, that they were unfair, where she's already seen part of the complaint. It's not a neutral board to get an answer from. And that's what the police commission is set up to do. So if the police commission were to get the complaints, how are they going to be fair to that employee? Because they've already gotten information before the employee gets to say what their side of the story is. And it is a conflict of interest, and then from my understanding, I think that's what Sam was saying. But Sam can talk for himself, but that's how I interpreted it. And all I'm asking is that we adopt what state law is and use the code that is set aside for the police commission, that if it does change, where the state of Montana, the legislatures, it's been gone through the process, that we don't have to come back and change it 101 years later, that it stays current because it is the current law. That's my opinion.
So how do you currently use the police commission?
The police commission is used according to state law, which is we have a panel of 3 that's set up there. I present the candidate to them, in which I then provide the information that's required by law. They're 18 years or older. They have a clean criminal history. A background has been done, a thorough background has been done. High school equivalency or completion of high school transcripts are done. There's a whole list that goes forward, and they check that off to make sure that that is appropriate. At that point, they sign off that he has met the requirements set forth by the state of Montana to become a police officer. At that point, then they go to POST, which is Police Officer Standard and Training, who actually certify that officer. And so you are just certifying that that officer meets the requirements so that he can continue in the process. That is what state law says. That is what we have currently been doing. Hearing complaints is 101 years ago. State law now says that how I understand it, and apparently how some other attorneys understand it, is not to hear complaints on officers.
But you would agree that the commission does have the authority to hear if, say, one of your officers, like you said, if you discipline them and they didn't like that outcome,
right,
then they would go to the commission.
There's 2 methods. The union has a method, but the state law also allows them to appeal to the police commission. And so they get a neutral party to hear the complaint. And they say, Chief, you issued too harsh of a punishment. We don't feel that that's the punishment. And they can find him innocent. They can actually, from my understanding, they can actually add more punishment if they feel I didn't punish him enough. But it's at that point, and it's at the employee's request. It's not at the city's request. It is not at the chief's request. It is the employee's request that gets to do that.
Thanks,
Thank you.
So, Chief, you're saying that section 526B under charges, right? You'd be okay with that if it said to review subsequent findings and or conditions, including penalties brought on by any person or persons against a member of the police department or officer of the police department for purposes of that appeal.
I'm sorry, I would have to sit down and read the law as to what you just quoted to wrap my mind around.
I think you just said that the police commission's role in the hearing the appeals of an officer is
Of the officer, yes.
useful, right?
Is useful, as long as the officer is
And
the
that's
person
one
that
of
requested.
two paths they could take, right? So the union or the police commission.
It's their choice.
So,
That's correct.
so your only problem with this, the way it reads, is that you just don't want the police commission to hear any complaints.
I do not believe that that is proper, correct.
Is that the only thing in here that you think is a problem?
Again, I would like to, I did not, look at the law prior to me coming here, but I would like to look at it, and I could give you a more accurate answer at that point, but yes.
What do you think about it?
I'd like to start by saying there is one area, one element, fairly small, that I think I do disagree with the chief on, and that is that the state law is not the only or the absolute. There are two things that the state law does dictate. You have outlined both of those. And one of them is the appeals, which was actually done relatively recently, and it was actually done at the behest of the unions. But I don't agree that that is the end, and that's, if that was the case and the state law was all that there was, there would be no need for legislative bodies and municipalities all across the state. The other thing that I want to go back and reflect on, and I think maybe it's a failure on my part to communicate, but the example that you gave of the shine shoes, to me, is exactly the reason we need this. I absolutely agree that we need to protect employee privacy. I agree 100% with Pete's comments that there needs to be a confidentiality agreement to anybody who hears this information. But to me, this board who has a confidentiality agreement that has the ability to look at it and say, you know what, there was 365 requests. We unanimously agreed that there is nothing to see here, move on. To me, the situation you described with the shoe shining is precisely the air cover that I think, as I've listened to it, and the situation you described is the reason that, in my mind, we need to do this. So we need to figure out what protections to protect individual rights, because I agree 100%. What I want is to take the spotlight off whoever is wearing those shoes that said, and like I said, I cannot state more strongly, this is not because of my lack of question and integrity in you as a professional, as everything about you. Nor whoever fills the shoes after you. This is just recognizing our world and how it's evolved, that you will come and say, I reviewed 365 complaints and there's nothing to see here, move on. We know from experience that the crowds are going to rattle and the crowds are going to clamor and they're going to say, oh, but that's the fox guarding the hen house, or that's the one individual. And to me, if we have a body that has sworn to, has a confidentiality agreement, historically that's been the commission. I've seen legislation where that's been the council before. But to me, that takes the spotlight off of any one individual to say there's a board that's looked at this and concluded nothing to see here, move along.
Well, like I said, as Pete, Mr. Kelly said, that the violation of those rights holds you personally liable. I would just remind you of that, because you're dancing on a line that can be argued in court. And again, you're relying on the chief to bring them to you. And like I said, I guess I've said what I need to say. Take whatever information that you find valuable and discard what you don't find. I did want to ask you though, you keep talking about your son being in law enforcement. What does he do?
He is currently adult probation and parole.
Okay.
So
Just so you know, we don't consider that law enforcement.
Okay.
It's an arena, completely different.
just to let you know.
That's okay. I could say he started out in prison. It makes for interesting conversation, but he started out in the prison system, and he has been a street cop as well, and he is certified across the board in all of those areas. So, I just, it's not that I'm unsympathetic to the cause. I understand, and I have lots of friends. I would include you among those that are officers. So like I said, it's part of my goal is to actually get the heat off of it. I think you guys have an incredibly difficult job that society is not making easier. And any place that we can support that and help calm the public, I'm in favor of. And like I said, I don't know, this is why I wanted to reach out to a city attorney, is because I would like to get from them, is there a way that we can address these concerns of confidentiality and provide this air cover? That to me is the only question that's left in my mind. I think this is a good idea. That's me, that's Dave. But how do we do it? Is it possible to do it and address those confidentiality? I don't know how it is that Missoula does it. I don't know how it is that the other cities in the state that are doing it. But in my mind, they have to be doing that because those confidentiality concerns are real. They're significant. We have to work within those constraints. So, and and to me, that's and I can't answer that, and you can answer that. We can share opinions, but that's a legal question, and that's kind of where I'm left hanging still.
Lori.
You know, we've been discussing this now for 35 minutes. We were tasked with asking the professionals, and Pete did that because the police department falls under his bailiwick. And both of them said, don't do this. We asked the chief of police, and he said, don't do this. So we didn't hear what some people wanted to hear. Therefore, we're still talking about this endlessly. And we're getting nowhere with it. And I don't think it's the right thing to do. I think that it's a waste of our time. It's putting the chief through something that is unnecessary. Our attorney has given us his advice. The gentleman from the government center has given us his advice. Those are the professionals. Those are the people we turn to when we have a question. And if we just don't like the answer, we're just going to keep pursuing it until we get the answer that we want, or are we going to take their good advice?
Lori, can I?
Kelly.
So I do think that I hear you and I agree with you, and I think that through some of the conversation we just had with the chief, that he does in fact think that we need to in any way update this ordinance because it's 101 years old, and the things that it says that that the police commission does, it doesn't in fact do because it doesn't match up with Montana Code annotated 2019 from, municipal police force, from the actual sections of the MCA. So I think, if anything, from this conversation, even though it went on for 30 whatever minutes, that we did come to the point that we know what the chief is uncomfortable with and is not wanting us to change, as well as Sam Painter saying the same thing, that we shouldn't do this. But I would say that we should make sure that we do update this to reflect Montana Code annotated, because that is what should be
That's all that should be done.
done.
All that should. And
All that should be
that's
done.
exactly what we got from our former attorney, was an ordinance, more or less repealing that one, the old one, and following Montana Code annotated.
Yeah.
And I can get you a copy of that.
I've got it.
Of the ordinance.
Oh, okay.
The proponents of this ordinance, I don't know what they don't hear with "don't do this." We've paid a lot of money to get these opinions. Don't do it. They don't like that response. So now they're crafting their sentences to come around behind and try to pick away at the words, don't do this. How much more clear can it be? Don't do this.
And I said, here, don't do
So,
this.
so I want first to say they is us, right?
That's correct.
So you can address me directly, that's fine.
Well, they're also
I-
part of our community.
And that's fine too, but I wanted to, I mean, it feels personal to everyone at some level. I just wanted to say that I don't believe this is a useless conversation. I think this is a good discussion. My purpose is to understand. It's not to hear what I want to hear or what someone else wants to hear. It's to understand. And I hope that anybody that's felt offended by that will accept that, right? And especially Chief. It's not that you're not heard, and I'm sorry if you feel that way. I know we've had this conversation many times, and I've heard you many times. I've heard from a lot of different people, but I'm really, truly just looking for understanding. So I hope you'll accept that.
I would.
So I guess the question is, do we move forward with this, or do we relook at the other ordinance that was written up just, following Montana Code annotated? So, my question is, do we move forward with this?
I do not think we move forward with this. But I'm also would not be in favor of the other ordinance that simply repealed the existing. To be fair to Pete, I don't hear, don't do this. What I hear is, don't do this as it's currently written. What I want to hear is guidance of, here's how you can do this or how you can do that. I didn't expect that what we put forth was going to be perfect by any means. What I expected to do was start to have a conversation, start to get a feel for what people had concerns with. And like I said, I agree 100% with it. So I didn't hear, don't do this. I heard, don't do this, not don't do nothing, don't do anything. What I heard is, this is not the answer. And I'm 100% happy and able to accept that. But I don't think this is not the answer equates to, therefore throw out the baby with the bathwater, get rid of everything and give up, it can't be done. What I'm still want to know is, what is it that we can do that can provide a level of air cover while respecting confidentiality, while addressing the other concerns? Like I said, it's the one point that I think I disagree with the chief on, is that there is very much a role for the city to add additional rules or procedures to that which the state has. They have a list of, I think they updated it from 17 things to maybe 19 things now, but there's a very, very small list of the things that as a city you can't mess with. But other than that, it says you are welcome to make laws, and they can even supersede or change state laws. I question whether you should do that at times, but to add or enhance them or put other elements is completely in line with what we do. So don't do this, I'm okay with. And therefore do nothing doesn't extend for me personally. And that's my, so I'm not ready to move forward with this, and I agree with I do not recommend this ordinance at this time. But I'm still curious to hear what are the things that we can do. I hear, this is Dave reading the table as best I as a human am able to do. I hear a couple people who say, I'm content doing nothing more than what's on the state books. I also hear several other people saying, I'd sure like to add another layer. I don't know what that layer looks like yet. And I just want to have that conversation. But I'm not comfortable moving forward with this or with the old one.
Is the old one, you're talking about 100 year?
No, the one to repeal the 100. I mean, we could certainly bring it up for action. We probably made a mistake last time in that we tabled it to initiate a conversation. It might have been better, and it might still be better, to bring the original, just repeal the 101-year-old one. It might be better to bring that to the table and have it not succeed and not pass, because I don't see 4 votes that will repeal what's on the books without having something better in place. I think we all agree that what's on the books needs some work. I don't think we have 4 votes to repeal the existing without putting something else in place. If we wanted to bring the old one forward, I'd certainly be okay with that. But if I shake my magic 8-ball, it will fail, and we'll find ourselves in the same position of, we still need to discuss and figure out what it is we can do. And we do need legal guidance and input, whether it be from MS, not it's like, how have other cities done this? What's worked, what's not worked? The extent of knowledge I have is from a conversation that I've had most specifically with Missoula, because I was aware that they had this in place. My bad, I don't have a copy of their specific wording in front of me, but I know conceptually they loved it, they swore by it, they had zero interest in removing it. And I do think, as our previous city attorney said, that guy is hands down the best guy in the state on municipality law. He's been doing it the longest. He's been there. In fact, it was very entertaining because he talked about the element about the police. He said, oh yeah, that came back a couple of years ago, the police union. He knew the whole backstory and who they talked to in the legislation. And I didn't get all the details, but the concept I got. So anyway, I'll shut up.
Teresa?
I think what I'm hearing, I don't know if there's a consensus, but I think everybody, what I'm hearing is everybody agrees we need to do something to replace it. We need to investigate further the code and then put the two together, check the bylaws or whatever the charter is and make sure they're all in sync. And it sounds like we need a subcommittee for that. It sounds like we need a group of people to work together on that. That's just my take on what's happening here.
I would agree with Teresa, because I feel like if we don't have a subcommittee to work on it, then we're gonna spend more meetings like this talking about it for a really long time, without any action, without.
220 days.
I agree with Teresa. I agree.
All right, so this isn't moving forward? We all agree on that? This,
Not moving forward.
not, okay.
I won't be moving it forward.
Okay. Comments from the public?
Well, as a matter of fact, I'm still here, and, actually, this whole issue is what brought me to be involved with the city business, which, of course, we shall be anyway, but, so I'm, in a way, I'm grateful for that. One thing I'm not grateful for is the difficulty that I've run into, because, like you would like the courtesies, I would like those courtesies also, because I'm not here, I respect you, and I respect and appreciate all the officers, and in no way, shape, or form do I appreciate being yelled at by UP, telling me that I have no business doing this, and that I don't understand, because I understand this very well. And I've researched it, I've spent many, many hours researching it, and this is all done to support the police department and the relationship that the police department has with the city. And there's not one evil thing about it, all right? And I don't think, I just want to clarify a few things. One, Pete, you mentioned, who'd you talk to?
Who did I talk to where?
At MSU, was it?
Dan?
Dan Clark, because Dan Clark was at that meeting that several of us were at. And he also talked about how police have left, and I'm not trying to offend any policemen, I'm just saying that he used as an example a case that was up in Billings where the officers had less of an expectation of privacy because of trust in the community. And that's a case that went to the Supreme Court right here. Maybe it was the appeals board, but it's a Montana case, and you can ask Dan Clark about it. You know about that because you were there. Another thing is, Sam Painter said, that, he didn't like it as it was, but I wrote it, and the reason why I wrote it as it was, everything about hearing is what I used from the existing statute or for the hearing of the appeals. It's not anything that I dreamed up. So that believe me, if you think as a police commissioner, I want to sit around and have hearings, that's not part of my day. I'll do it as part of the appeal. But I know that they don't even have a policy outline. They have no idea what they'd be doing. So, which brings up another point. The police commission doesn't do anything. The chief gives us, last time I think we got a photocopy of a homeschool diploma. We get nothing but a pack of papers. We don't get to take them home. We don't get to research. We don't do anything but check the boxes in. And by the time he brings them, that's the only thing we do. We can't do anything to find out for our good conscience if that's the right time, okay? So that's the only thing the police commission does in this community. There is a state statute for the police commission, and that's the bare minimum of what ought to be done. And it's important to add that that includes the statement that more can be added, okay? So if you want a better community and better relations between your police chief and your citizens, then you'd add that to make sure that happens. I don't think, going back to my last point, I don't think we need to have hearings, okay? I just copied that language out of what we've had, which also, by the way, it's 112 years old, but my neighbor happens to be a former city clerk from the 1990s, and they were doing it then. So this is being disregarded purposely, okay? Because you follow the law or you take care of the law, and the law hasn't been taken care of. So it's not because it's archaic, it's because people have chosen to disregard it. And that's just the way it is. And I don't need to belabor that point, but so let me see where I am here. 20 people. Oh, yeah, the thing about your shoes and 20 people, of course we'd have your back on that, and that's the intent of this whole thing. You shake your head. You think I'm gonna be like, hey, this is the same form. You know, I work with you. We're on the same team. We are on the same team. And therein lies the problem.
Got about 8 seconds left.
Well, all right. I just add one more thing. By law, the chief is also supposed to inform the city council of any disciplinary actions. That is one part of the Montana statute. I'd have to look at it again, but you're all welcome to look at that too. I would just ask that you clear this up. I think there's a nice spot we can find from Missoula has loved it. I would at least look at that. We're not asking for any, we don't want to divulge any, break any privacy rules, but the most important point is, I guess, this thing that Tanner wrote, if you just cross out all the things about hearing, you're left with only review. If you just let this police commission that's appointed by the mayor review each complaint, that's all we're asking for. And then if we have a rogue guy, like the guy after you, and he's letting things go, then we can just take our concerns. I know, and you know what?
Okay, we're good.
I'm gonna finish. We can take
Tie it
our
up.
concerns to the mayor, and that's the only thing that we would be doing. So I'm done now, and I'm happy to take any questions or any opinions, because I know what this matters is. And I support the city and the police department.
Any other comments from the public?
Jason Wells, 616 South Hauser. I'm a citizen of this public. I just want to comment, thank you for proving my point. We had a committee hearing that contained information on a police officer, and it was currently divulged to you that he was homeschooled, that she divulged. Those are the kinds of things that are very serious about letting information out about background checks and things of that nature. So that's the only thing I really want to point out. Thank you.
Okay.
Excuse me, I made no
No,
mention of
I think we're good. Anyone else want to speak on this?
This is Hope Smith, 517 North Hauser. I think one of the most important things that the police commission can do is to improve community relations by actually fostering communication between the community and the police agency. I think that having a commission can help improve some of our department policies and procedures. And I think also policy recommendations, although they don't have to be accepted, but they can prevent issues by identifying areas of concern and subsequently offering some options to improve policing. As far as I can see, the police commission wants to work with the police department, but they also want to work with the community. And I think our police department should want the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Hope. Any other comments? All right, let's move on to department head reports. Let's just start here and we'll work our way around. Go ahead, Pete.
Okay, let me see. We discussed the courts and the alternatives contract. As far as the legal department, We, as the mayor said, to repeat, we interviewed 2 candidates for the city attorney's position today. I contacted Ray, asking him to advise us of what's going on with his service to us, and invited him here this evening, so I will turn it over to Ray.
As briefly as it is for one of the Coons brothers to present anything, I will tell you that we've got a case management system in place now, so that we've got an index of our cases, the upcoming dates, and the relevant information. We've been working on computerizing the cases themselves, so that each case file is fully computerized with all the relevant data, the discovery, the correspondence, the court orders. And as the police department is going through a switch, a transition and upgrade in its computer systems, I anticipate that as that comes online, we'll also be able to make the production of evidence in criminal cases, what's called the discovery, a faster and less burdensome process on the officers and on the city attorney's office, so that we are transmitting things more electronically rather than burning DVDs, printing things out, and that if the city hires someone in a staff position, hopefully that will be in a good shape for them to come in and make a smooth transition. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Ray.
Thanks, Ray. As far as the Parks Board, I have not attended the last 2 meetings, but I'll have to say Courtney is doing an exceptional job of comprehensively coordinating all of their efforts and communicating between the city, the planning office, and the Parks Board. But I don't know the exact details of it because I have not attended the last 2 meetings.
Okay. Corey.
We're doing quite well, actually, with our resort tax, surprisingly. Lonnie informs me that the income has exceeded our expectations, which is good. And we also know that we're going to have a very, very well-attended summer with all the events we have, so that will favorably impact the resort tax collection. I think that's all I have to say about anything like this.
Dave.
Mayor, I actually had a follow-up question for Pete, but I also saw Teresa had her hand when Pete was discussing his department, so I defer to her first.
I'm sorry, I can wait. It was that I did go to the last Parks Board meeting and offered that they could give me a list, so I have a good update when we get to me. I just thought I could interject there.
Thank you.
And then my question had to do with the city attorney. If I recall correctly from the mayor's comments up front, you had mentioned that we had 2 interviews, and if I understood correctly, you said you were going to be making an offer. My question or concern is that contracts do go through council, and so I'm curious how.
Right.
Okay, and I just understood you're going to be making an offer later this week, and I'm going, help me understand how those 2 align.
I'll offer him the contract, and then I will come before council.
But will the contract will be whoever the candidate is will understand that it's a contract pending approval by council?
No, I'm gonna hold that back from him.
All right.
Sorry, Dave.
No, that's all right. We're good.
It's been a long day.
I know. And the good news is it only has 10 minutes left.
That's right.
I have nothing from planning other than I do anticipate some follow-up as far as forms and such with him based on our conversations tonight. But other than that, I have no update.
That'll work. Thank you.
Because of our schedules, Chief Wells and I have not had a chance to discuss much over the last couple of weeks, but something did come up about 2 days ago, which I need to talk with him specifically before I can report anything here to the council.
That's fair.
But I do want to say that I think, I saw several of the officers on foot walking around town this past week. And it was nice. It was nice to have them out and, say, hey, I think you said, hey, Tom, or whatever. That's good. It really does. It helps a lot to keep the people, I mean, we see the cars go through, but you never know who's driving, but you do know when when you see people on the street. I think that's a great thing. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom. Teresa?
All right, so for Public Works, I know Jim's been very busy. We haven't been able to get together in the past 3 weeks, actually, and last week was this water conference up in Spring Fall. So I did briefly catch up with Brian, and what I understand is you're still waiting for the DEQ approval on several of the water projects, which puts those in jeopardy of, beginning and ending in the short season that we have. And then there were a number of ad hoc or emergency type activities throughout town that the team has managed. Water main break on Kainu, and water sewer line break on Second and Hagen, water leak on the golf course that's been looked into. I think this week they were planning to get to it. I don't know.
This morning.
See, they're all over it. And then there was some locates done, 2 or 3 days locates that were done to prep for future stormwater projects. And what was the other thing? So I didn't really have anything else to add since we haven't been able to talk about anything lately.
No, pretty covered. We've been pretty busy. We had a
The
week
guardrail,
from now.
the guardrail on Westport Road.
All of the broken pipes are fixed right now. We'll just continue to handle these emergencies as they come, but we are still trying to get our daily things. We'll be out patching potholes soon. That's a problem, but we've been quite stuck, and we're a small crew. I just want everybody to realize there's a total of 7 counting me. And there's a lot of work to be done every day, the normal stuff, not including the breaks and the problems that happen.
Jim, I noticed around town there's a lot of, they're putting little flags in in yellow lines. Is that gas line or?
Those are locates.
So locate.
For what?
For, part of it's for engineering, part of it, we've got people that have water line issues and stuff, so they call it a locate, and that's what they do. They stick the flags in to tell them where the gas line or power line or phone or whatever, and you're gonna see a lot of them in this, because the locate's being done for the phase 1 of the stormwater in this whole end of town. So there's a lot of marks and paint on the ground and stuff, and that's what it is, just locate for that purpose.
And I just wanted to pass on a thank you from a homeowner on Chambers. You all paved the road in front of his home, and that's something that he's been wanting for quite some time. So he was very excited and very thankful.
That's done with our gas tax money, but it has to be used for pavement or concrete. And that's the one street that we could pave that I don't believe will be tore up.
Fingers crossed. But he wanted to pass on his thanks.
And I understand you're talking with Bill Bullock about the guardrail on Westport Road.
Yes, will be taken care of.
Good, thank you.
Teresa?
So for Parks Board, it's all good news. I mean, it's a great way to end tonight. I can tell you the annual parks cleanup, they had that block party in May. Moose Trails Playground staining project is still underway. Or actually, I don't know if they completed it, but that's something they've gotten volunteers rounded up to take care of. The City Nature Challenge was held, and that was a success. I think that's something that'll grow every year. I think they all did, and Courtney especially did a great job pulling that all together. Northwestern Energy is teaming with Parks Board to put in the most trees in 1 year ever. 27 trees will be going into the rights of ways through June and July. Bee City USA is catching on at 2 other cities, Billings and Livingston for Montana. More projects underway. There's a mini parks cleanup dog ditch on Thursday. I don't know the time, but
5 o'clock, I think.
Thursday this week. Anybody that wants to pitch in at the dog park up there, there's plenty of what to clean up. And there's a tennis court assessment underway for patching and repairs. Frisbee golf course updates. They're looking at filling in some holes that were caused from erosion. They're still partnering with BRTA and Beartooth Lane for trail improvements. Small tree plantings to improve urban forest, and the McGillen Trail Work Assessment. They're looking into that to improve connectivity and reduce erosion. So it's all great news out of the Parks Board, and that was a fun thing to read out.
Thank you for picking up that.
Yeah,
all of that.
I know you're busy with the other details.
Kelly?
Yes, so, we didn't have the accountability committee didn't meet this past month. They had 2 back-to-back, board meetings, so we're gonna be meeting next month. But the sustainability board, 2 updates there. The first one is for the energy performance contract. So that was a RFP that we put out last August. And so so lots of things happened between now and then, but we do have a committee together now. Lonnie, myself, Courtney, and then Corey Thompson. And we are interviewing the 2 candidates, the 2 contractors next Wednesday in the afternoon. So we should have a selection really soon, and they'll come and do the energy audit. And our goal is to have that started by August, September timeline. And then the sustainability committee our board is also working on a land inventory. So land parcels within City of Red Lodge that are open, and they're going to be doing a training, which is actually also going to happen next Wednesday, I believe at 4:30, so that anybody that wants to participate can attend, and it'll be training on how to utilize the system that can actually be on your phone, where you can go around and mark city land areas. So we can get a more comprehensive list of parcels that are open land in Red Lodge.
All right.
That's it.
Anything else? We have 3 minutes for public comment.
Yeah, I'd like to say something.
Go ahead, Mary.
Mary Cameron, 720 Hagan Avenue North, number 7. I have some questions about Resolution 3575, the budget amendment for the resort tax. Was that removed from the agenda?
Yes.
Oh. Is there any reason for that?
We're working with our auditors right now on that.
Okay.
Any other public comments?
This is Hope Smith again, 517 North Hauser. I'm just wondering why there's no transparency on who has been interviewed for city attorney. Can you address that, please?
This is a comment period, so you can just do your comments and just state that if you want.
I guess I'll state that I'm disappointed that a person that's going to be our city attorney, someone who needs to have a lot of trust from the public, we don't even know who is being interviewed and who's doing that interviewing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
This is Mary Cameron again, 720 Hagan Avenue North. I would also express my disappointment with the lack of transparency in the whole interview process and for the city attorney.
Thank you. Any other comments? 1 minute. Let's call it. Thank you.
Mayor.